Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio, everybody. What is going on? It is Gale here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi Season 5 video. And today we are going to be talking about what the actual fuck was Episode 4. Yes, this is the Episode 4 breakdown. We're going to go from start to middle to finish. And we're going to be talking about everything that happened in the episode. And of course, talking about the big reveal and explaining exactly what went down, the whole situation behind it, and what it meant for the rest of the series entirely, of course, from the very beginning, from season 1 itself. Now, of course, this video will contain spoilers for the most recent episode, so if you haven't obviously watched it, be sure to go check it out, of course, right? Come back to the video once you are done watching it, because of course you don't want to get spoiled. You want to save the big reveal for when you watch the episode, so make sure you watch the episode before you check out this video. Now, of course, if you guys also go on to enjoy it, remember to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more Danmachi content, and let me know in the comment section down below as well, what did you guys think about the big reveal? If I missed out on anything, let me know in the comment section down below, because of course there will be nuances and stuff that I haven't fully read in the light novels just yet, in terms of the reread, of course, right? Because obviously I'm rereading the light novel as the anime is airing. So what I do is I watch the episode and then I go and read the light novel over the weekend. Basically on Saturday and Sunday I read the rest of the pages that, you know, are covered in the episode, so then I can obviously make the cut contents video. So that's how I do it. So it's been a minute since I've read volume 16, so of course my reread of it is basically like me rejigging and rejogging my memory for, of course, remembering exactly what went down. So if there's any nuances that I forgot about in the light novels that I haven't mentioned in this video, feel free to drop it in the comment section down below. And overall, if you have anything to add, any of your own opinions and, you know, thought processes in regards to certain details, feel free to drop it in the comment section down below. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say down below. Now, I think the best thing we can do is to talk about the big reveal itself, right? So let's skip on over to, of course, the end, where we obviously see good old Freya, of course, transforming herself from seer. So that confirms a theory and obviously a discussion topic that a lot of people have been having from the very beginning of Danmachi. From Danmachi season 1, this has been a very intense topic about whether or not seer is connected to Freya in any way, shape, or form. A lot of people thought that she might be like an adopted child, like as in like somebody who, you know, Freya found, the very first familiar member for Freya, of course, right? She could have been potentially a god herself, maybe Freya's sibling or Freya's daughter, potentially. The other theory was, of course, the fact that Seer was actually Freya, because of course Seer's alternative name, or I should say Freya's alternative name in Norse mythology is actually Seer, and along with that it's also Horn. We'll come on to that in a minute as well. So it's not like these theories and these discussion points, you know, haven't been a thing for a very long time. They've actually been a thing for a very long time. It's something that has, you know, been exacerbated, and of course potentially even, you know, you could argue that it's been hinted towards us for a very, very long time, even because in the second season we obviously saw Seer giving Belle the Freya medallion before War Games. We've seen in Danmimo across various stories, a Stray Record, and also various other event stories, that, you know, Seer has been teased to being something greater, potentially god level. But we never really identified how and why she was potentially being treated as such. It's obviously come to a head in this arc, of course, right? And it is a very confusing one. I'll agree with a lot of people on this one. Like, it is one of the most mindfuckery things, basically, that Omori has written for Danmachi. It's one of those ones where, to be honest, it is hard to explain if you don't reread it a couple of times and you don't, you know, go back into previous seasons and try and figure out everything, right? But the best way to explain it, and I'm gonna try and explain the whole Horn, Seer, Freya situation as best as I can. So what we're going to quickly do is we're going to go back in time a little bit. And we're going to take a look at this specific scene, right? This is pretty much the scene you need to watch to kind of understand the entire situation, basically. So Freya found Horn when she was a stray, basically, when she was familiarless, familyless, whatever you want to call it, right? She was alone in the world, right? And Freya comes to her like this, you know, beacon of light, basically, right? And what she says is that basically, and what she asks of Horn is, I will take you in. However, there's one thing we need to do. I will take one of your names and I will give you one of mine in exchange. That is the whole thing that starts this entirely. And this has been something that's been happening for over 10 years in the Danmachi timeline. Now, remember, this is the current timeline that we're in, right? With Belle and everything, right? Belle's only been in Norario for 6 months. Freya has had this persona and this identity of seer for a freaking long time, 10 plus years, basically, right? The idea with this whole situation is that basically Freya takes Horn's name, which was originally Seer. Horn is the original Seer. She takes the Seer name from Horn, and she gives Horn her name, which is of course Horn, right? It's an alternative name for Freya. But along with that, what she does is, because Horn has this ability to transform into anything and everybody and be able to change forms just like Freya can, she is able to transform into Freya, and Freya then transforms into Seer. So basically, whenever Freya wants to gallivant as Seer, potentially, and go, become Seer in the Hostess of Fertility or wherever she wants to be, Horn can take over if necessary. It's not always the case that Horn takes over as Freya, but more often than not, if needed, keyword there is if needed, she would take over as Freya. Like, for example, at the start of the season, right, when we saw Belle and Seer on the date. Now, keep in mind, throughout the entire date, it was Freya as Seer, by the way. It was entirely Freya as Seer throughout day one of the date. Now, the following day when Belle woke up at the inn and everything, that Seer was Horn, of course, right? But throughout the main date, the main actual date we've seen in episodes 2, 3, and technically 1 by extension, Seer is Freya. So, the Freya we see in the tower during the Goddess Festival was actually Horn. Now, the thing is, right, another question a lot of people had, and I'll come back to this, explaining how this exactly works in just a moment, and also extending it to other parts as well. I just want to explain what's been happening in Season 5 so far and how it exactly works as well. But, of course, people were asking about the throne room situation. Who was who, basically? Was Seer actually Horn, or was Seer Freya, or was Freya Horn? Was Freya Seer at that time, or Freya actually, I should say, not Freya Seer, Freya at the time on the throne, right? What was in that meeting? What happened at the end of episode 1, right? Now, there's a couple of theories about this, but I think the most likely theory, and this is, I think, in my opinion, the likeliest theory, to be honest. I keep jumping between the two, but at this moment in time, after discussing with some people as well again, I think this theory stands the strongest, is that the Seer that we saw in front of Freya was actually Horn. The Seer was actually Horn at the time, and that's why Freya said, "It's surprising that you've taken this form in front of me," right? And effectively what that was Seer or Horn asking for a chance with Belle, either to figure out her feelings for Belle, because one of the things that I think, they'll explain a little bit better later down the line as well, but kind of something that was hinted in this episode as well during her enragement, right? Or Horn's enragement later down the line, right? We see her going crazy, right? She can take some of Freya's feelings into herself, and of course Freya's affection for Belle is also taken into her as well, and so she also feels that same love for Belle, but then she also hates Belle because she knows that Belle will change how Freya acts depending on how he responds to Freya, right? So Horn wanted an opportunity with Belle to see her feelings and identify her feelings, and of course she decided that she hates him. He's gotta go. He's gotta go, blood. This guy has gotta go. He's got to go. And so I think that is something to keep in mind as well when it comes to Freya and Horn specifically. Is Horn likes Belle because of Freya, but also hates Belle because of Freya. It's one of those weird ones, of course, right? But that was that throne room scene, and Freya was actually Freya, of course, in that situation. So Seer in the throne room with Freya Seer was Horn, actually. But outside of that, in the rest of the seasons, we've seen Seer. Every single season we've seen Seer. Every single moment we've seen Seer. And every moment we've seen Freya and Seer have been Freya. We've never seen Horn as Seer or Freya. Like, it's always been Freya as one of the two, basically. So there's never been an opportunity where Horn has replaced Freya as Seer or as Freya herself, basically, right? So that is something to keep in mind. There's never been an opportunity where Horn has taken over in previous seasons, so keep that in mind, of course, right? Now, this has been something that's been happening in the story for a very long time. So Seer, whenever she's Freya, or whenever Freya is Seer, I should say, man, it's getting very confusing. She's been developing relationships with the rest of the Hostess of Fertility members, with Belle, with everybody else that has been coming into the Hostess of Fertility. So Freya has been leading this other life, effectively. She's been leading this other life. She's been leading the life that she's always wanted to, this life that is free, right? It's why she's doing it. She wants to get away from this whole stereotype that she's got, this personality that she's cultivated as the goddess of beauty, basically, right? Because this is something that she's been, regarded as for a very long time. People treat her differently, in a very stereotypical way, and so on and so forth. And so she feels very constrained by it. And so what you see at the end is her killing off that other personality of hers because Belle rejected her. That's why she was saying for a very long time, free me, you'll free me from this, my odor, my perfect husband, basically, right? The idea was that Belle would basically allow her to be herself, effectively. Not, obviously, you could argue that this is a very naive way of thinking, right? But this is how Freya has operated, and this is like effectively thousands of years of just being like this as a character, or being treated like this as a character, right? And so the best thing I would say is, I would understand, especially with the coming episodes, I will say this. I'd understand if you start hating Freya, but trust me when I say this, think of it with an open mind. Think of it with an open mind, because you will see the fragilities and also the depth of Freya's character later down the line, is what I will say. But that is the Horn and Freya situation. Now, a lot of people may say, like, does this actually matter in the grand scheme of things? Is Seer being Freya actually a big thing? I would say yes, this is a very big thing, because you have to remember, she has managed to dupe not only just, one goddess in Hestia, but multiple gods and goddesses, as being this random girl in a pub, basically, fostering relationships with other adventurers and the Hostess of Fertility members, who she's worked with for years, for 7+ years even, you could say, right? And then you have to also realize how it'll affect Belle directly, as somebody who's been targeting Belle for so long. Freya has been targeting Belle since season 1. We've known this, right? We know Freya's lust for Belle as that perfect husband, as that partner, the soul partner, you could say, right? A soul link, you could say. I think it's going to be very important in the grand scheme of things, and it's going to matter heavily as to what happens in the next couple of episodes. Is Freya actually going to, absolutely take Belle by force, or is she going to play some insane game to kind of manipulate the system, the guild system and everything, to take Belle from the Hestia Familia? We're going to have to wait and see. This is going to be something that's going to be very, very interesting to see, and we're going to have to wait and see how the development goes. Now, of course, coming back to Freya, we have to take a look at this part, right? With Belle and Seer at the very beginning in the inn, right? Now, I want to go over here to the Purple Eyes moment, because this is the biggest one, right? And this is where we again see that Freya's fragilities, in a way. When she's, especially as Seer, she doesn't want to do certain things. She doesn't want to take advantage of the charm and everything, right? Now, a lot of people might be wondering, how did Belle break out from this, right? And this is where I will say the anime could have done maybe a little bit better in explaining the situation. Of course, if you've seen it since season 1, you'll probably already know what happened here, of course, right? And if you have been, of course, keeping up with how Belle's skills and abilities work, you'll know this fairly well. But Liar's Freeze, of course, Belle's signature skill, the one that, of course, links him to not only just Eyes, but the Xenoses and the Minotaur, and Astraeus as well. I was gonna say the Minotaur, but Astraeus in particular, of course, as well, right? This skill that he has, this dedication, this single-minded focus towards that, allows him to not be able to be affected by charm. It's a very big thing. It is a very, very big thing, of course, right? And in the light novels, this is cut content, so I guess I can mention it right now. There was basically like a golden flash. There was this snap that he basically had, realizing that effectively, wait, this is wrong, and signifying that Liar's Freeze was active, basically. Now, we didn't get that necessarily in the episode, right? This is something that we just did not get in the episode, unfortunately. And so obviously this is one of those things that we're gonna have to obviously rely on you knowing Belle's skills to identify exactly what happened. It's not just sheer willpower. Unfortunately, Belle does not have, well, I guess you could say it's still technically sheer willpower because of how Liaris Freeze is, but effectively that's the reason why. Liaris Freeze is the reason why he was able to break out of the charm against Seer. And of course we then see Seer also going into a little bit of a tirade, saying like, you know, she can't, she doesn't want Belle to look at her. She's like, you know, she feels very ashamed that she had to resort to this as well. And this is where I will say again, that whole split personalities thing comes into play with Seer and Freya. You know, Seer, whenever Freya is Seer, her personality is completely different. This is the Freya this is the character Freya ideally wants to be, but because of, you know, everything that's happened with the familiars, with the other gods and goddesses, just generally the public perception of Freya, she's the Freya that we know, the manipulative, the more evil Freya, you could say technically, right? And so that comes that is something to keep in mind, I would say, very much so, because you can see that, you know, she had so many opportunities, you could say, from especially season 1 to, you know, take over Belle, but she never really took it. She never really you know, took advantage of it. So that's something to keep in mind. Now this scene I really liked, by the way. This is the scene I really liked between Welf and Belle. One of the things I will say that doesn't help this scene, I feel like, as well, and especially when it comes to a little bit of a later point, and this is something, again, I feel like we needed season 2 to be better for this. Again, it all comes back to season 2. Honestly, season 2 being bad will affect a lot of seasons to come, to be quite honest. I'm not gonna even lie, to be honest. I feel really annoyed that season 2 was so integral and they fumbled the bag quite a bit with that season. But in season 2, we get to see that you know, Hestia reveals Liaris Freeze to the rest of the familia, and of course, you know, reveals about Belle's single-minded focus towards Eyes Wallenstein, right? And you wouldn't think about it necessarily in this episode if you didn't know about it, but if you knew about it, I feel like, especially with Welf's discussion towards Belle, you know, him saying like, oh, you need to get your act together and, you know, tell her the truth, and tell her what you really feel, right? That scene, the idea that these guys know, Welf, Lily, Mikoto, so on and so forth, know about Belle's Liaris Freeze would have helped out majorly. So I think that's again one of those things that I wish season 2 was better, but season 2's ass. We can't really do much there, unfortunately. It's one of those weird things, sadly. Obviously, the Hegni Belle scene was really good. I really liked it. Again, it's Hegni's personality, by the way. This personality of his is actually his personality, by the way. This cringe personality of his, the Chunibuyo personality, is actually Hegni's personality. It's very funny. And you'll see more comedic moments with this guy. He's really good. I really like Hegni, or Hogni as it's called in the anime. It's one of those weird things because in Danmimo he was called Hegni, but in the light novels and of course in the anime and stuff, it's Hogni. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, it's pretty cool the way they portrayed Hogni here. I really liked it again as well. And then now, of course, this scene I found very weird, I will say. Not this one. Where is it? A little bit ahead. We'll come back to that action sequence in a second, but I want to come over here. This was a little bit weird, in my opinion. I found this a little bit weird, the way they portrayed it. I think, again, a little bit more time, or maybe just a little bit more fleshed out, I think this would have been a bit better. But basically, Eyes is obviously realizing that, you know, Freya and... well, Seer and Belle, oh my god, I'm gonna struggle here. Seer and Belle are running away from the Freya family. She's also trying to basically hold them off a little bit before, you know, they finally find Belle and Seer, of course, right? But also, one thing a lot of people were like, oh, why wasn't this action sequence a lot longer, right? Between, of course, all of these guys, the Freya family versus the hostess of fertility members. Which, by the way, I will say, this has probably been the best hand-to-hand combat sequence we've seen in quite some time. I'm not gonna lie, it has been the best hand-to-hand combat sequence we've seen in quite some time in Danmachi. I've been begging for them to do better with the hand-to-hand combat sequence between two human-like beings, because one of the biggest issues I had back in season 2 and season 3 in particular is that whenever it was human-like beings, or even like human-like monsters, like the Minotaur technically is a human-like monster, just a lot bigger and more bull-like, but still human-like technically, 2 feet and all, that's what I mean. I felt like they were very lacking. I feel JC Staff was not in their bag whenever they were doing that. But this scene was great. I really liked it. The general screenplay, the fluidity, everything was spot on. I really liked it, and it also portrayed the strength between the two characters really well. With, of course, Hogni not moving a lot at all, not flinching, not moving a muscle that much, just, you know, making sure that the placement of the sword was in the right position against Ryu, who was going all out. Again, the difference between a level 4 adventurer versus a level 6 adventurer, right? Now, a lot of people were like, why was this only a 60-second scene, the fight between all of these guys, right? Well, the reason is, these are all like high-level adventurers versus like level 4s and 3s and stuff. It's going to be a 60-second fight. They're going to absolutely get demolished in seconds. It was like that in the light novels. It's like this even in the anime as well. So I think they portrayed it really well. Again, this is just showing the sheer level of difference between the main characters and stuff. Of course, you also saw the difference between Anya, or the differences and the, you know, relationship between Anya and Alan as well. They're siblings, of course, right? So that's something to keep in mind. That'll come into play as well. And of course, you can see where Seer is also coming into play as Freya, of course, knowing that Anya was there, an ex-Freya familiar member as well, technically, Anya, that is to say, of course, right? So that is something else as well. Now, obviously, we'll come back to this sequence, of course, right? At the end, Belle's rejection of Seer, of course, this is what basically cut everything up effectively. This is where everything was done and dusted. This is where the Seer personality effectively was torn to shreds, effectively. Belle's rejection of Seer. It is one of those things, like, of course, you know, from a realistic point of view, of course, this is something that, you know, you'd hope that, you know, a girl or guy could take better, right? You wouldn't go on a rampage in this situation, but you have to remember Freya's situation. She is a goddess. She's also somebody who's been looking for hundreds, thousands of years for somebody. And the one person she finds, the one person who can save her from everything, the one person who can give her this freedom, rejects her, is not something you take down lightly. And again, this is something that you have to realize. I know a lot of people will hate her, and I know a lot of people will dislike her from here on out, but keep an open mind is what I would say. Keep an open mind. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any other questions in regards to, of course, this episode as a whole. I tried my best to explain everything. I probably didn't do a very great job at it. I will admit, I do apologize if I didn't do a great job. I'll try my best to explain more stuff in the comment section down below. But I appreciate all of you all for watching this video. Hopefully I could kind of guide you guys in the right direction in terms of, you know, certain scenes, exactly why, what happened, of course, right? Just a bit of a TLDR to run you down again on the whole Horn Freya situation. The best thing to say is that Horn is the actual Seer. Freya takes the Seer identity from Horn, gives her the Horn identity in return, and as a result, Freya is able to appear as Seer in any place she wants. And up until now, for the most part, if not for every sequence that we have seen Seer, Freya has been Seer. The only two times we've seen Seer as Horn, or Horn as Seer, I should say, has been when she was in the throne room with Freya herself, of course, and of course the latest episode, in this episode, of course, when she goes and meets Belle the following day, right? Those are the only two times we see Horn as Seer. Outside of that, Freya has always been Seer, and whenever we've seen Freya, again, outside of the tower scene in the Goddess Festival, Freya has actually been Freya. So the Ishtar death, thanks to Freya, so on and so forth. More on that, of course, in other seasons, right? More like that in other seasons, basically. But yeah, that is just a bit of a TLDR on the whole Horn Freya situation. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this breakdown a little bit at least, so that you guys could understand it better. And of course, let me know in the comment section down below if I missed out on anything or anything of that sort. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Again, the cut contents video will be coming out soon as well. That will hopefully explain more stuff in detail when I get the chance to actually reread the section and this section in the light novel, to of course be able to identify the nuances that I might have forgotten as well. But yeah, appreciate all of you for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.